Aggressive elephant finds lost boy in jungle. You won't believe what happens next. The ground exploded beneath Sam as a massive foot slammed down inches from his head. He rolled instinctively, gasping as the earth shook and a deafening trumpet filled the air. A towering elephant loomed above him, its tusks gleaming and its trunk lashing violently. Dust and leaves swirled around them as the animal reared back, its enormous form blocking out the fading light. Sam scrambled to his feet, his legs trembling. The elephant stomped again, so close he could feel the vibration travel up through his bones. He threw himself behind a bush just as the creature's trunk swept past, crashing into the foliage. This is it, he thought, his breath coming in ragged gasps. This is how I die. The elephant froze, its ears flaring as it sniffed the air. Its wild eyes scanned the clearing, dark and glinting with fury. Then Sam saw it, a deep, bleeding gash running down its leg, dripping dark blood onto the ground. He swallowed hard, his fear momentarily eclipsed by confusion. The animal wasn't just angry, it was hurt. Sam stayed frozen in the bush, watching as the elephant swayed on its injured leg. The wound was jagged and fresh, likely from a poacher's trap. The creature let out a low, rumbling sound that vibrated through the air like a warning. "I'm not here to hurt you," Sam whispered, barely audible. His body trembled, but something about the elephant's pained movements tugged at him. It wasn't just dangerous, it was desperate. Reaching into his pocket, Sam pulled out the crackers he had stuffed there earlier. He unwrapped the noisy plastic as slowly as he could, hoping the elephant wouldn't charge again. The sound made the animal pause. Its ears twitched and its trunk swung toward him, sniffing cautiously. "Here," Sam said softly, extending the crackers with a trembling hand. "It's food. Just don't stomp me, okay?" The elephant's trunk brushed against Sam's hand, startling him with its roughness. Then, with surprising gentleness, it curled around the crackers and lifted them to its mouth. Sam exhaled shakily, his heart hammering as he watched the animal chew. Its eyes, once wild with fury, seemed to soften slightly. "Good," he whispered. "We're okay now, right?" The elephant rumbled softly, its massive head lowering slightly. For the first time, Sam felt like it wasn't a predator. It was a survivor, just like him. Before Sam could move, a sharp sound snapped through the air. Voices, low and rough and getting closer. The elephant stiffened, its ears flaring again as it swung its trunk defensively. Sam turned toward the noise, his stomach twisting. In the distance, shadows moved between the trees. Two men, rifles slung over their shoulders, pushed through the undergrowth. Poachers, Sam realized, panic surging in his chest. The elephant rumbled louder, stomping its uninjured foot as if warning the unseen threat. Sam grabbed its leg, whispering urgently, "Shh, they'll hear us. Please, we have to move." The animal hesitated, but as the voices drew nearer, it finally turned, limping into the jungle. Sam followed closely, his heart pounding with every step. He glanced back once more, seeing the poachers stop near a patch of flattened grass, the place where the elephant had stood moments before. Their laughter echoed ominously as they began to track its trail. Sam clenched his fists, determination hardening his fear. "They're not going to catch you," he thought. "Not while I'm here." Sam darted through the jungle, the elephant limping heavily beside him. Each step it took sent tremors through the ground, but Sam barely noticed. His focus was locked on the distant voices that grew louder behind them. The poachers were relentless, their boots crunching through the undergrowth as they followed the trail of broken branches and churned dirt. Sam's chest heaved as he glanced back. The men hadn't seen them yet, but it was only a matter of time. The elephant rumbled low, stumbling slightly. Sam slowed, pressing his hand against its massive leg to steady it. "You've got to keep moving," he whispered, his voice shaking. "We're almost safe, I think." The creature's ears flicked back, and it let out another low rumble, this one softer, almost like a response. Sam's fear wavered as he met the elephant's gaze. It looked at him with something he hadn't expected: trust. They pushed forward, but the jungle grew denser, the thick undergrowth clawing at Sam's clothes. The voices of the poachers faded slightly, but he knew better than to think they had given up. The elephant suddenly froze, its trunk swinging sharply to the side. Sam skidded to a stop, looking up at it in confusion. "What is it?" he whispered. The answer came when his foot caught on something thin and metallic. He stumbled forward, barely catching himself, and looked down. His stomach sank. A snare. The wire gleamed faintly in the filtered light, stretched between two thick roots. Nearby, more wires crisscrossed the ground, hidden beneath leaves and dirt. Sam crouched, his hands shaking as he traced the wires back to a small mechanism buried in the earth, a tripwire that would trigger a crude but deadly trap. "Oh no," he breathed. He glanced at the elephant, which had stopped just short of the snare. Its ears twitched, and its trunk swung toward the trap, brushing lightly against the wires. "Don't!" Sam hissed, grabbing its trunk and pulling it away. The elephant let out a low rumble, jerking its head back. Sam stumbled but managed to stay upright. He crouched again, fumbling with the wires. "I can't let them catch you," he muttered under his breath, his fingers working clumsily to disarm the trap. Sweat dripped down his face as he pulled at the mechanism, finally snapping the wires loose. The snare collapsed with a soft, metallic clang. Sam exhaled shakily, but the relief was short-lived. A branch snapped somewhere behind them. The poachers were close. Sam grabbed the elephant's trunk, his voice urgent. "We have to go, now!" The elephant rumbled in agreement, limping forward as quickly as it could. Sam ran beside it, his heart pounding as he heard the men shouting. "Did you hear that?" one of them called. "Yeah, over there!" The jungle erupted into chaos. Sam pushed through the thick undergrowth, his arms stinging as branches whipped against his skin. The elephant crashed through the foliage beside him, its injured leg slowing it down. The shouts grew louder, punctuated by the crack of a gunshot. Sam flinched, his chest tightening. "We're not going to make it," he whispered, panic clawing at him. The elephant seemed to sense his fear. It let out a loud trumpet, the sound echoing through the jungle and startling the poachers. The sudden noise gave Sam an idea. He grabbed a thick branch from the ground and swung it hard against a nearby tree. The resulting crack sounded like a distant footstep, and the poachers hesitated. "Did you hear that?" one of them asked. "It came from the left." Sam suppressed a grin as the men veered off in the wrong direction. He turned back to the elephant, motioning for it to follow. "Come on," he said softly. "We're almost clear." The jungle began to thin, the dense undergrowth giving way to a small clearing. Sam stopped, breathing hard, and turned to the elephant. Its sides heaved with every breath, and its injured leg trembled beneath its weight. Sam's stomach twisted as he watched the blood drip steadily from the wound. "You're not going to make it much farther like this," he said, his voice low. He crouched beside the elephant, his hands fumbling through his backpack. There wasn't much left, just an empty water bottle, a crumpled granola wrapper, and a tattered scarf. Sam sighed, pulling out the scarf. He tore it into strips, wincing at the rough edges. "This isn't going to be perfect, but it'll have to do," he muttered. The elephant rumbled softly, lowering its legs slightly. Sam hesitated for a moment, then pressed one of the makeshift bandages against the wound. The elephant flinched, letting out a loud trumpet that made Sam jump. "Sorry," he said quickly. "I'm sorry." The creature rumbled again, softer this time, and lowered its head. Sam worked quickly, tying the scarf strips tightly around the leg to slow the bleeding. "There," he said finally, stepping back. "That should help for now." The elephant nudged him gently with its trunk, the touch almost playful. Sam laughed softly, despite the tension still thrumming in his chest. "Yeah, you're welcome." A sudden growl cut through the air, freezing Sam in place. He turned slowly, his heart sinking as he saw two glowing amber eyes staring at them from the shadows. The tiger. The massive predator stepped into the clearing, its striped body rippling with muscle, its ears flattened, and it let out a low snarl, its gaze fixed on the elephant. Sam's breath caught. The elephant rumbled loudly, stepping protectively in front of him. Its injured leg shook under its weight, but it stood tall, tusks gleaming in the fading light. The tiger crouched, its body coiled like a spring. Sam knew what was coming. "It's going to attack," he whispered. The tiger lunged. The tiger sprang forward, a blur of muscle and fury. Its claws glinted in the dim light, aiming straight for the elephant's injured leg. Sam stumbled backward, his scream caught in his throat as the jungle erupted into chaos. The elephant bellowed, raising its trunk high and swinging it with all its might. The strike landed squarely on the tiger's side, sending the predator tumbling into the undergrowth. But the tiger was relentless. It regained its footing in an instant, pacing in a wide circle, its eyes never leaving its prey. The elephant shifted its weight, positioning itself between Sam and the tiger. It let out a deep, vibrating rumble that made the air feel thick with tension. Sam's chest heaved as he fumbled for something, anything that could help. His hands found a rock on the ground, smooth and heavy. Without thinking, he hurled it toward the tiger. "Get away!" he shouted, his voice cracking. The rock struck the tiger's flank. It snarled, its amber eyes snapping toward Sam. For a heart-stopping moment, it hesitated, as if weighing its options. Then, with a low growl, it turned its full attention to him. The tiger crouched low, its muscles coiling like a spring. Sam's legs felt frozen, rooted to the ground as the predator prepared to pounce. "No, no, no," he whispered, backing away. The elephant trumpeted, a sound so loud and furious it made Sam's ears ring. It charged forward, swinging its tusks in a wide arc. The tiger leapt aside, its claws raking the air as it dodged the attack. The elephant's injured leg buckled slightly, and Sam's stomach twisted as it let out a groan of pain. But it didn't stop. With another swing of its trunk, the elephant forced the tiger back into the shadows of the jungle. Sam's heart raced as he searched for something else to help. His gaze landed on a long, fallen branch lying nearby. It was thick and jagged, the perfect tool to fend off the tiger. He grabbed it, the rough bark scraping against his hands, and held it in front of him like a spear. "Stay back!" he yelled, his voice trembling but determined. The tiger stepped forward, its glowing eyes locked on him. Sam tightened his grip on the branch, ready to strike. The elephant let out another roar and stomped the ground, the vibrations sending a ripple through the dirt. The tiger hesitated, its ears flicking back. For the first time, it looked uncertain. The tiger lunged again, faster than Sam could react, but the elephant was ready. It stepped into the tiger's path, raising its trunk like a whip. With a thunderous swing, it struck the predator across the head, sending it sprawling to the ground. The tiger yelped, stunned by the force of the blow. It scrambled to its feet, snarling, but this time it didn't lunge. Instead, it backed away slowly, its glowing eyes flicking between Sam and the elephant. Sam held his breath as the tiger disappeared into the undergrowth, its snarls fading into the distance. The jungle fell silent, save for the heavy breathing of the elephant. Sam dropped the branch, his arms shaking as the adrenaline began to wear off. "You did it," he whispered, his voice barely audible. He stepped closer to the elephant, his hand resting against its rough, wrinkled skin. "You saved me." The elephant rumbled softly, lowering its head until its trunk brushed against Sam's shoulder. The gesture was gentle, almost reassuring. Sam knelt beside the elephant, his eyes scanning the bleeding wound on its leg. The tiger's claws had reopened the gash, and the blood trickled down its grey skin, pooling on the jungle floor. "I'm sorry," Sam murmured, his voice thick with emotion. "You got hurt because of me." The elephant rumbled again, this time softer, as if dismissing his guilt. It shifted its weight, lowering itself to the ground with a heavy sigh. Sam reached into his backpack, pulling out the remaining strips of his scarf. "This is all I've got left," he said, "but I'll make it work." His hands trembled as he pressed the makeshift bandage against the wound, tying it tightly to stop the bleeding. The elephant flinched but didn't pull away, its dark eyes watching him intently. "You're tough," Sam said with a faint smile. "Tougher than me, that's for sure." The elephant let out a soft rumble, its ears flicking slightly. The moment of calm was short-lived. In the distance, the sharp crack of a rifle shattered the silence. Sam's blood ran cold. The poachers were still out there, and they were closing in. The elephant raised its head, its ears flaring. It rumbled deeply, its massive body tensing as if ready for another fight. Sam stood, his hands clenching into fists. "We can't stay here," he said, his voice urgent. "They'll find us." The elephant rose slowly, its injured leg trembling but steady. It nudged Sam gently with its trunk as if agreeing. Sam nodded, determination hardening in his chest. "Let's go. We'll find a way out of this." Together they turned and disappeared into the jungle, the shadows swallowing them whole. The jungle was alive with tension. Sam and the elephant moved cautiously through the undergrowth, their every step accompanied by the distant echo of voices and the occasional snap of a branch. The poachers were closing in again, their persistence unnerving. Sam wiped the sweat from his forehead, glancing back over his shoulder. The oppressive humidity made it feel like the air itself was pressing against him. The elephant limped beside him, its trunk occasionally brushing Sam's shoulder as if to reassure him. "We'll be okay," he whispered, more for himself than the animal. But the jungle had other plans. The first sign was the smell, a sharp, earthy scent that seemed to rise from the ground. Then came the sound, a low, distant rumble that made Sam's chest tighten. He stopped, his heart pounding as the noise grew louder. "What's that?" he muttered, looking around. The elephant froze, its ears flaring wide. It let out a deep rumble, its body tense as it turned its head toward the sound. And then Sam saw it. A wall of water surged through the trees, sweeping away everything in its path. The ground trembled beneath him as the flood barreled closer, uprooting plants and smashing through undergrowth with terrifying force. "Run!" Sam shouted, grabbing the elephant's trunk and pulling as hard as he could. The elephant trumpeted loudly, turning to follow Sam as the two raced through the jungle. But the water was too fast. It hit them like a freight train, knocking Sam off his feet and dragging him into the swirling chaos. He gasped for air, his arms flailing as the current pulled him under. The world spun, branches and debris slamming into him from all sides. He reached out blindly, his fingers clawing for anything to hold onto. Suddenly, something strong wrapped around his waist. Sam choked on a mouthful of water as he was hoisted upward, the rush of the torrent still roaring in his ears. It was the elephant. Its trunk had curled around him, lifting him out of the flood and onto its broad back. Sam clung to the animal's rough skin, coughing and gasping for air. The elephant pressed forward, its massive legs pushing against the current with incredible strength. It swayed with the force of the water but didn't falter, its determination unwavering. "You're amazing," Sam whispered, his voice hoarse. The floodwaters showed no mercy, rising higher as the jungle turned into a churning river. Trees leaned precariously, their roots exposed as the rushing water tore through the soil. The elephant trumpeted again, raising its trunk high to sniff the air. It adjusted its path, heading toward higher ground. Sam clung tightly to its back, his fingers digging into its tough hide as they battled the current together. "Keep going," he shouted, though he wasn't sure the elephant needed his encouragement. Ahead, the water split around a cluster of rocks. The elephant moved toward it, its steps slow and deliberate, but the current was relentless, slamming against its injured leg. The elephant stumbled, letting out a loud bellow as it nearly fell. Sam's stomach lurched. "You can do it!" he cried, his voice cracking. The animal steadied itself, its ears twitching as it pushed forward again. Sam felt a surge of awe as he watched the creature fight against the overwhelming force of nature. As they reached the rocks, Sam spotted movement ahead. A family of monkeys huddled together on a low branch, their terrified eyes fixed on the rushing water below. The branch sagged under their weight, threatening to break at any moment. Sam pointed. "They're going to fall!" The elephant rumbled, its ears flicking toward the monkeys. Without hesitation, it waded toward them, its trunk extending like a lifeline. One by one, the monkeys leapt onto the elephant's trunk, chattering nervously as it lifted them to safety on a higher tree. Sam watched, his chest tightening with a mixture of fear and admiration. "You're a hero," he said softly, patting the elephant's neck. The water began to recede as the jungle sloped upward. The elephant pressed on, its steps slower now, its injured leg trembling with every movement. Finally, they reached a dry patch of ground. Sam slid off the elephant's back, landing unsteadily on his feet. He turned to face the massive creature, his heart aching at the sight of its bleeding leg. "You need rest," he said, his voice gentle. "You've done more than enough." The elephant rumbled softly, lowering itself onto its knees with a heavy sigh. Sam knelt beside it, his fingers brushing against its rough skin. "You saved me. You saved them," he said, glancing back at the monkeys, now safely perched in the trees. "I don't know how, but I'll make sure you're safe too." Before Sam could catch his breath, a sharp noise cut through the air, a gunshot. His head snapped up, his blood running cold. The poachers! They had followed the floodwaters, using the cleared path to track the elephant more easily. Sam could hear their voices now, shouting as they approached. The elephant raised its head, its ears flaring. It let out a low rumble, its body tensing as it prepared for another fight. Sam clenched his fists, his jaw tightening. "Not this time," he muttered, his fear giving way to determination. He looked around, his eyes landing on a fallen tree nearby. Its branches were thick and twisted, perfect for creating a makeshift barricade. "Come on," he said, grabbing one of the branches and pulling with all his strength. "We're not letting them win." The elephant watched him for a moment before rising to its feet. With a deep rumble, it used its trunk to lift the larger branches, helping Sam create a wall of debris. As the poachers' voices grew louder, Sam stood beside the elephant, his heart pounding. They weren't just running anymore, they were fighting back. Sam's makeshift barricade barely held together, a tangle of fallen branches and debris propped against the surrounding trees. He wiped his brow, adrenaline surging as the poachers' voices grew louder. The elephant stood beside him, its massive frame towering over the crude barrier. Its trunk swayed, sniffing the air, while its ears flared at every sound. Though injured and exhausted, it was ready to fight. Sam crouched behind the barrier, gripping a sturdy branch like a club. His heart pounded as he whispered to himself, "We're not going to let them take you, not after everything." The first figure appeared through the foliage, a rifle slung over his shoulder. The man stopped, his sharp eyes scanning the area. Behind him, another man emerged, motioning to the snare Sam had disarmed earlier. "They've been through here," the second man said, his voice gruff. The first man nodded, stepping closer to the barricade. His gaze landed on the elephant. "There it is," he muttered, raising his rifle. Sam's breath hitched. "Hey!" Sam shouted, leaping to his feet and waving his arms. The poachers froze, startled by the boy's sudden appearance. "Leave it alone!" The first man sneered. "Get out of the way, kid. This doesn't concern you." "It does now!" Sam yelled back, his voice trembling but defiant. The poachers exchanged a glance, their expressions hardening. The second man took a step forward, gesturing with his rifle. "Move, or you'll get hurt!" Before Sam could respond, the elephant trumpeted loudly, the sound deafening and furious. It stomped the ground, shaking the jungle floor. The poachers flinched, their confidence wavering. Taking advantage of their hesitation, Sam grabbed a rock and hurled it toward them. The first man ducked, cursing loudly. "You little—" The elephant charged. Its injured leg dragged slightly, but its sheer size and force sent the poachers scattering. The first man dropped his rifle as he dove out of the way. The second man stumbled, falling into a patch of mud as the elephant swung its trunk, knocking the weapon from his hands. Sam felt a surge of hope. "Yes, keep going!" he shouted. The first poacher scrambled to his feet, drawing a pistol from his belt. He aimed shakily at the elephant, his hand trembling as he shouted, "Stay back!" Sam's chest tightened. Without thinking, he grabbed a thick branch from the barricade and charged. "Stop!" he yelled, swinging the branch with all his strength. The poacher turned just in time to block the blow, but the force of the impact knocked the pistol from his hand. It clattered to the ground, disappearing into the thick undergrowth. "You little brat!" the man snarled, grabbing Sam by the arm. Before Sam could react, the elephant trumpeted again, its trunk whipping around like a battering ram. It struck the poacher squarely in the chest, sending him flying backward into a tree. He crumpled to the ground, groaning. The second poacher, now unarmed, scrambled to his feet and bolted into the jungle, shouting over his shoulder, "Forget this! It's not worth it!" Sam's knees buckled as he sank to the ground, gasping for air. The elephant stood over him, its massive body casting a protective shadow. Its ears twitched, and it let out a low rumble, as if checking to see if Sam was okay. "I'm fine," Sam whispered, reaching up to touch the elephant's leg. "Thanks to you." But the elephant's leg was shaking badly now, its bleeding wound more pronounced after the effort of the charge. The creature swayed, letting out a soft groan as it sank to its knees. "No," Sam said, panic rising in his chest. He crouched beside the elephant, placing his hands on its rough skin. "You can't stop now. We're almost there." The elephant rumbled softly, its trunk brushing against Sam's arm. It was a gesture of reassurance, but it only made Sam's heart ache more. A sudden beam of light pierced through the trees, followed by the crackle of radios. Sam turned, his eyes widening as figures in uniforms emerged from the jungle. "Over here!" he shouted, waving frantically. The rangers rushed forward, their flashlights illuminating the scene. Two of them grabbed the remaining poacher, who was too dazed to resist, while others approached Sam and the elephant. One of the rangers, a woman with a calm but commanding presence, knelt beside him. "Are you hurt?" she asked, her voice steady. Sam shook his head, tears streaming down his face. "It's not me. It's the elephant. Please, you have to help it." The ranger placed a hand on his shoulder. "We will," she promised. She stood and motioned to her team. "Get the med kit and call the sanctuary. Tell them we're bringing in an injured elephant." The rangers worked quickly, cleaning the elephant's wound and wrapping it in fresh bandages. They spoke in low, reassuring tones, their movements careful and deliberate. Sam watched silently, his exhaustion finally catching up to him. He leaned back against a tree, his body trembling as the adrenaline ebbed away. The ranger knelt beside him again, offering him a bottle of water. "You did well, kid," she said, a faint smile on her face. "This elephant's lucky to have you." Sam took the bottle, his hands shaking. "I didn't do anything. It saved me." The ranger's smile widened slightly. "Looks like you saved each other." Sam glanced at the elephant, which was now resting peacefully as the rangers prepared to transport it. He nodded, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Yeah," he said softly. "We did." The truck carrying the elephant rumbled up the dirt road to the sanctuary just as the first rays of dawn broke over the horizon. Sam sat in the back of another truck following close behind, his eyes never leaving the larger vehicle ahead. Every bump in the road made him wince, worried it might hurt the elephant further. "Almost there," the ranger beside him said, her voice calm but kind. Sam nodded, his hands clenching the edge of the seat. His clothes were still damp and torn, and his body ached from exhaustion, but none of that mattered. The only thing he cared about now was making sure the elephant was safe. The convoy slowed as they entered the sanctuary gates. A wide, open expanse of land stretched before them, dotted with trees, waterholes, and clusters of smaller animals moving about in the early morning light. Sam's breath caught. "It's beautiful," he murmured. "It's home," the ranger replied with a smile. The trucks stopped near a shaded enclosure where veterinarians and sanctuary staff were already waiting. The team worked swiftly, guiding the elephant off the transport truck and into a large, soft patch of sand. The creature limped slowly, its ears flicking nervously, but it followed their calm voices. Sam jumped out of his truck and ran toward the enclosure. He stopped just outside the fence, gripping the bars tightly as he watched. "Is it going to be okay?" he asked, his voice cracking. The head veterinarian, a tall woman with a gentle but firm demeanor, looked up from the elephant's leg. "It's in rough shape, but it's a fighter," she said. "We'll do everything we can." Sam nodded, his throat tight. He couldn't bring himself to say anything more. The elephant rumbled softly as the team cleaned its wound again and applied fresh bandages. It lowered its massive head, its trunk resting on the ground, and its eyes briefly met Sam's. He felt the connection between them like an unspoken promise. "You're safe now," Sam whispered. The hours passed in a blur. Sam refused to leave the enclosure, even as the sun rose higher and the heat grew oppressive. The rangers offered him food and water, but he barely touched it. He stayed close to the fence, watching every move the team made as they worked to stabilize the elephant. Finally, the head veterinarian approached him, her expression warm but tired. "You should rest," she said. "We've got things under control." Sam shook his head. "I can't leave yet, not until I know it's okay." The vet hesitated, then gestured toward the gate. "Come in, just for a moment." Sam's eyes widened. "Really?" She nodded, "but only if you stay quiet and calm." Sam slipped through the gate, his steps hesitant as he approached the elephant. The creature lifted its head slightly, its trunk swaying toward him. "You did it," Sam said softly, crouching beside it. He placed a hand on its rough skin, feeling the warmth beneath his fingers. "You're going to be okay now. You don't have to fight anymore." The elephant rumbled softly, nudging him gently with its trunk. Sam laughed quietly, tears brimming in his eyes. But he knew this moment couldn't last forever. The sanctuary staff needed time to work, and the elephant needed space to heal. "It's not goodbye," Sam whispered, brushing a hand over its trunk. "I'll come back, I promise." The elephant let out one last soft rumble as Sam stood and stepped back. The ride back to his family was quieter. Sam sat in the back seat of the ranger's truck, his gaze fixed on the sanctuary disappearing behind them. When he arrived at the campsite, his parents ran to him, their faces etched with relief and worry. They pulled him into a tight embrace, their voices overlapping as they asked if he was hurt, what had happened, and how he had survived. "It's a long story," Sam said with a tired smile, "but I'll tell you everything." Back at home, Sam sat at his desk, surrounded by books about wildlife conservation. A framed photo of the elephant taken at the sanctuary rested beside him. In the image, the creature stood tall and proud, its leg fully healed. Sam smiled as he opened an email from the sanctuary. Attached was a video of the elephant roaming freely within the protected land, its steps strong and steady. "We thought you'd want to see this," the email read. "Your elephant is thriving." Sam leaned back in his chair, his heart swelling with pride and relief. The journey had changed him. He wasn't just a kid who had survived the jungle. He was someone who could make a difference. He clicked on a new tab and began researching ways to support conservation efforts. It was just the beginning, but he knew it was a path he wanted to follow. Sam's story wasn't just about survival. It was about resilience, connection, and the power to protect what matters most. The elephant had saved him, and in return, he had saved the elephant. Now, it was time to take that mission further. Sam's story wasn't just about survival. It was about resilience, connection, and the power to protect what matters most. The elephant had saved him, and in return, he had saved the elephant. Now it was time to take that mission further. Join the fight to protect wildlife and preserve their homes. Subscribe now to make a difference.